We're here now. We can hear about how blockchain technology is transforming government record keeping. Here with us today is Alexander McGee, CRO of Head of Government Affairs and co-founder of Balcony. Alex serves as a vital bridge between government customers and the engineering team, bringing deep understanding of the public sector's challenges from his background in real estate development. Alex will share how Balcony is transforming government record keeping by partnering with Bergen County, New Jersey, to tokenize 370,000 property deeds worth $240 billion using blockchain technology. Their innovative platform reduces deed processing time by over 90% and creates tamper-proof records, demonstrating the potential for blockchain solutions to modernize public sector infrastructure nationwide. Please, let's welcome Alexander McGee.
So, hello. Let me tell a little story first.
Go ahead.
Okay. Alex, we've been working together, what, 3 years? 3 years now. And Alex is the perfect example of, we come up with an amazing idea, and then the government takes over our idea and then invites us to participate in the government's wonderful idea. And Balcony, as a company, has been really working in an integrated way with the CBDI for literal years. And the idea, which is a wonderful one, is blockchain as a technology is the perfect fit if you're trying to solve a very particular problem. And that particular problem that we're looking to solve is ownership of property. Who owns property? In the project that we're going to talk about specifically, we're concerned here in Wyoming with the foreign ownership of property near critical infrastructure. In fact, about, was it 2 years ago that the Bitcoin? Yeah.
Yep.
About 2 years ago, the Biden administration, not being political, just stating a fact, became very concerned with a Bitcoin mining operation, which happened to be located pretty darn close to two pieces of critical infrastructure. One was the Microsoft data center, and most of you that drive Interstate 80 see that data center off to the northern side, and also right near that data center happens to be F.E. Warren Air Force Base. F.E. Warren is a unique Air Force base, and I believe it's the only one in the country. Kim Wright can probably correct this. It's the only one in the country that doesn't have a runway. And the reason is, what takes off from F.E. Warren, you don't want to land. And so it's a nuclear missile controlling base. So the Biden administration, whether rightfully or wrongly, I don't want to make an assessment, felt that having a Bitcoin mining facility that was primarily owned by a Chinese company probably created a bit of a challenge. So Alex had the wonderful idea that, this technology, blockchain, I'll let him explain it. I'm going to cut the story short, I promise, because he truly is the expert. Blockchain represented a couple of real opportunities. Certainly the immutability of the data and everything else, but Alex also wanted to add other technologies like zero knowledge proof to this solution, because Wyoming is a privacy-driven place. We don't want to disclose everybody that owns property near critical infrastructure. We just want to disclose the people who we don't want to have critical infrastructure nearby. So that's how Alec came to us, and we began working with him. And through Alex's work with our legislature and with the university, actually flipped the program a bit. And now the Wyoming Department of Homeland Security is seeking out a solution. And I'm proud, I'm going to let Alex make the, talk about that more specifically. Proud that we are involved in that. in that program. So really, if we ask Homeland Security, they're going to say it's their idea.
It is their idea.
No, it's not. It's your
100%. No, fuck it. It's all of them. It's all of them.
But so it is my distinct pleasure to let Alex talk about Balcony and the incredible application that we're working jointly on together, and how I think this technology is going to revolutionize problems like what we're facing here in Wyoming.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you and the university. You guys have been great partners. I like to start from the beginning, and since it's a small group, make it very conversational. If you have questions, just please stop me and ask. So my name's Alex McGee, one of the co-founders of Balcony Technology Group. Balcony is a data intelligence company focused on land records and assisting local governments, county governments, and state governments with that effort. There's different use cases throughout, so I'll go over them in my talk. But a bit about me, my background's in real estate development. So I grew up building apartment buildings, buying land, raising a bunch of money, and trying to figure out how real estate works in New Jersey. I was successful at that, and with that, I dealt with a lot of government programs and bad technology. And I have this brain where I just want to fix stuff and create new products, right? So Balcony initially started because me and my friends who did this company together were like, hey, crypto is big right now. This is like 2021. This is like the height of DeFi summer. We're like, hey, we can basically get people to give me their crypto gains, put them in opportunity zone funds, and then, use that as part of the capital stack. So the first company that we started was called Balcony DAO. This is back when DAOs were everything, right? So we had this idea to create a community around real estate and then secure that with some sort of like Web3 token. That went really good until it didn't go good, right? Just because as every first startup idea, the market kind of takes hold and you have to pivot and change. So this is when FTX collapsed. This is when like the Terra Luna collapse happened, and no one wants to talk about crypto anymore, right? So we're like, okay, how do we pivot on what we've built to help a specific customer or use case? And how do we turn this into a SaaS model? And we had a lot of relationships in government just because we were all real estate developers. So I went to the city of Orange, New Jersey, which is 30,000 people, about maybe 10 miles outside of New York. So it's a very transactional urban environment. And I knew they had a lot of paper, and I knew they had a lot of issues with just property maintenance and property management. And I also knew that software that is being used in real estate across the country, but specifically in my state, is older than me, right? Like I was born in 1992. A lot of the software that's being used is of the 80s. So it's like COBOL-based system that is very siloed, not even on the cloud, it's very on-prem server. So we're like, hey, this thing called blockchain could be pretty interesting for you to secure your records and also just be more able to find missing revenue and missing compliance. Everything is on an immutable ledger. Like great idea in talking about it, but how to actually make it work took about 1.5 years to figure out, right? So we then switched the company name to Balcony Technology Group to act more professional. Like no one wants to see DAOs, or you can't have a pseudonym when you go in people's offices. You have to really just be yourself, and this is how SaaS companies are really done and started. So we created this module called Property Compliance Module, where we looked at all of the COs or occupancy certificates that were issued on a property. We ingested tax assessment information from the county level, and we found the difference of people that didn't file for a CO because the government wasn't looking. And we were able to identify $360,000 of missing revenue in year one in the city of Orange. So for a new technology company, if you find the government missing money, they want to talk to you, as opposed to you just have like this new cool solution that is all high speed. No one really cares, right? What I find with other founders in the industry, you can't just push blockchain, right? You can't just push AI. You have to push the process. You have to push what you're actually doing and what actually matters, as opposed to this new cool thing. So that was our first customer and client. And then since then, we've gotten like larger cities in New Jersey to sign on. We have like about 10 cities that use our technology right now, ranging in size from 100,000 people down to like 10,000 people. That all culminated with the biggest contract that we all know and talked about in Bergen County, New Jersey. So Bergen County has 1 million people. It's double the size of Wyoming. It's one county in New Jersey, and they have records going back to 1718, right? It's an older county that's outside of New York City. But, we always knew that the blockchain is best suited when it comes to overall land records, as opposed to just like a CO or cert on top of a property. If you looked at matter of fact, who here has bought a house before? Anybody bought a house? How fun was it when you bought your house? not a lot of fun, right? Yeah, exactly. Because this
Search.
because the systems that are being used are so old. Like something as simple as an address search can't happen in most government systems because they're indexed by book and page number and by personal name, and mortgages are indexed by book and page number and personal name, right? So like this new concept of finding my address in a system just doesn't exist in most systems. And that's because like, that's how our country was basically started, with indexing. So we understood that, and we went to Bergen County and said, wouldn't it be nice to have every single deed and mortgage associated with the parcel in chronological order like it should be on one system that's immutable, that if you looked at it, it just tells you what it is, meaning that you don't have to necessarily look at a title examiner to tell you who bought what at your property. It should just be there, right? That's not a novel concept. That's just a regular logical thought process. So it took about 2 years to make that happen, from the first conversation from the county clerk to when we actually got our first contract. So Bergen County is innovative enough to think that if I can change my indexing, if I can understand how like the system actually works, I can do more deals. I can record more information because it just makes the system a bit more streamlined. Now, when you look at title, the title company is not going in and recreating everything. They're just looking at parcel one, and they're seeing everything in an immutable fashion, which is amazing, right? So the first effort in Bergen County was to fix the indexing. The second part of it is the ingestion, right? So most government does not use artificial intelligence. Shocker, right? But if they use artificial intelligence on the ingest, that takes away the manual process for how they can record documents. Because when you really think about it, it's like people that are overworked, understaffed, that are trying to push paper in an environment that is very thankless, right? Like, when have you ever thanked your county clerk? Like, never. When have you ever like had a good experience at a county office? Probably not ever. You're paying a ticket, or you're paying a fine, or you're recording some document. You may get married at the county, but for the most part, they handle marriages, divorces, passports, deaths, and real estate, right? So you don't really have a great experience at the county office. But they're very powerful in the sense that they are the only arbiter of truth for land records when you really break it down. Like, most states don't have an aggregated state system when it comes to real estate. It's all bifurcated over 3,000 counties in the country. And when you look at what really happens, those 3,000 counties all hire their separate vendors. So the naming conventions and the indexing that's associated with all these things, it's like a patchwork over the whole entire nation, when it really shouldn't be, right? You should like, and another thing I found out, there's no standardized deed across America, right? Like lawyers, people that are, adjacent to the transaction make their own ideation of what a deed is. And what that does is it slows down the whole entire system. So when you fix the ingestion, or you try to, or you fix the indexing, what you basically have a more working system that could be really done the right way, right? Like, you can have different solutions that can come into play because you have these things that are working for you. So I met Steve along the way. We were connected to Senator Lummis at a Satoshi Action dinner, and she was saying that, Wyoming is one of the best states to work in. This is a great opportunity for your company to come here. And then she introduced me to Steve. When I first met Steve, I thought he was the most connected guy I knew, just because if you don't know Steve in Wyoming, you don't really know anybody, in my opinion. And it just helps because when we go to the legislature, or where we talk about certain things, to have a person that's from here and knows the game is awesome, right? So this is around the time that he was talking about when CFIUS did that first, saying you can't own this asset next to this military base in Wyoming. So on Happy Jack Road, right? So there was a company called Mine One that owned a Bitcoin mine on Happy Jack Road, which was next to those pieces of critical infrastructure. CFIUS, what we found, has a very reactive process when it comes to finding out if like our biggest adversaries are buying land next to our military bases. The reactive process is tips, believe it or not. So they rely on tips, and they rely on PitchBook, which is a true story. If you go to the U.S. Treasury building and you ask real questions about how they are proactively figuring this out, the answer is they're not. Like, they are looking at money flows more than they're looking at land transactions, because the system is so bifurcated. There is no like centralized point to say, hey, this is a bad transaction or a good transaction. So what we thought we could do is utilize the blockchain and artificial intelligence to create this like signals network to allow for different law enforcement agencies to have an assessment of risk associated with the transaction. So what that means in layman's terms, if I bought a house with my wife using my personal name and an FHA mortgage and an American bank, and it's not next to a military base, that lowers the level of risk associated with that transaction. But if you see a transaction that uses a Delaware C Corp that has a BDI bank funding the transaction that buys a warehouse next to a military base on its face without going into like entity resolution, that seems like a higher risk transaction. But it's tough because a lot of things aren't in structured formats, right? CSV files and Excel files are the easiest way to understand like tax assessment information. But what I'm describing to you is hidden in unstructured data. So UCC documents, mortgage documents, deed documents that are living in a separate system. So you have to solve for extracting this metadata. And then you also have to solve for that pattern recognition to then have a level of risk associated with the transaction. You have to tie all that into a GIS map because you have to really know where these properties are being sold. And then now you're able to geofence certain areas that are higher risk or lower risk, right? So all that takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of people to understand real estate and technology to make it work. And then we have another partner that's not here called Quantifind. Quantifind is an entity resolution company that works for every field or agency you can think of. And they look at open source information based upon who the LLC is or who the person is. So they use other data partners like Wirescreen, that is the highest, I would say, fidelity when it comes to PRC data, or Chinese media that is attached to certain LLCs or people. And all we're doing is we're just showing the law enforcement folks that we're going to partner with, hey, this company X is tied to this person on the OFAC list. This money is coming out of Singapore. This person that's doing this bad thing over here. And then on top of that, they bought the property using a funding vehicle out of the United States in cash. And this is what they bought. This is where it's at, right? So as an intelligence officer or as an intelligence apparatus, all you're doing is you're taking away your biases and you're giving people facts about what is going on, right? And that's what we do. So the product is called mTrace, and that is exactly what we are talking about people around the country. Like 23 states have laws that bar this foreign ownership of land next to military bases, but it can be used for other things too, right? Like a local use case could be, a search warrant. How do police officers get information to, get a warrant to search your home or whatever? They have to go to these databases very manually, and then they have to aggregate information in different places to get that preponderance of evidence to actually do that thing. So we believe using zero knowledge proofs, using the blockchain, we don't have to unduly bother people that shouldn't be bothered, right? Like we need to protect privacy, but at the same time, protect America. And the way to do that is through zero knowledge proofs. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, just a little bit, because zero knowledge proofs, for those of you that aren't aware of what zero knowledge proof, an example I use in the classroom that's very simple is, and this will apply mostly to the women that are here in the room. One of the most dangerous things you do is hand over your ID when you're asked, ID yourself. Because what are you handing over? Well, you're handing over your name, your address, your birthday, and very often that's not the information that's being sought. If the question is, are you at least 21 and an hour old, you can come into this establishment, then why do we have to disclose your birthday? Why do we have to disclose your address? None of that is relevant to the question of, are you old enough to be in this bar? Well, what zero knowledge proof does, it's an amazing technology that discloses important information without disclosing the underlying information. And imagine in the scenario I've just given you that you have an application on your phone that has a picture of you, because we need to know it's you, and a big green check mark that says she's good to come in. That's all that we really need to disclose to make sure that, you are in compliance. And so imagine now taking that technology and applying it to something like what Alex here is explaining. We want to disclose bad actors. We want to, and when Alex explains all of the information that's being brought together in this application, it staggers my mind, because I don't think the human, without this technology, is capable of putting together all of this information and making what are really important decisions. But by bringing it all together the way that Balcony is and displaying it the way that Balcony does, it actually makes it almost intuitive, where even in some of the demos, I've looked at this and I'm like, oh, holy crap, that doesn't look right. And there's no way, the human mind would have the capacity without that. And so what a Balcony is doing, which to me is absolutely fundamental, is in an incredibly powerful analytical way, disclosing important information without disclosing what shouldn't be disclosed. And, Wyoming is one of the most privacy-driven states in the country. Anyone who started an LLC here in Wyoming knows that if you use a registered agent, your name isn't even in the company that you're creating. We thrive for privacy here. But at the same time, we have a responsibility to safeguard critical infrastructure. And so the brilliance of the Balcony system, in my mind, is balancing two very diametrically opposed realities. We need to know this information, and we need this information to be displayed in a way that provides law enforcement or others who should have access to this meaningful, actionable data. But at the same time, innocent people, leave us out of this, okay? We shouldn't be a target if we are not, engaging in any activity that would be under suspicion. And so we live in a time right now where through, I think, the brilliant deployment of technology, we can satisfy these diametrically opposed truths.
Yep. Yeah, and a lot of it's public data, right? Like, we're not looking at PII. It's simply what you file at the clerk's office or what is publicly out there. That being said, no one wants their name to wind up in some database when it doesn't have to be, right? So that's where that comes into play. So the future use cases for Balcony are kind of limitless in the sense that we've only sold to governments to date, right? So now we're starting to branch out and look at title companies as another sale for us. So title companies, as you're aware, or you may not be aware, there's multiple parts to title. There's the title agent, there's the underwriter, and the researcher associated with the transaction. The researcher, what they do is they send someone down to the county and then they recreate what happened at your property because things aren't saved in the proper fashion. So if you think about the blockchain, about how you have an immutable ledger that could be a private blockchain for Albany County, and parcel one has a genealogy of history of sales that are already there in the proper format, that makes the researcher's job a lot easier to then say, hey, I'm taking the liability of this being accurate and true, right? Because title is really based upon what is not there versus what they find, right? You buy a policy because you're protected about what is not there, but a lot of it's based on accurate data. And if we can prove that this data is true using the blockchain, I think that's a huge advancement for how things actually should work, right? And for a title company, they have a lot of form documents that they don't use artificial intelligence for, right? So transfer documents, HUD statements, anything that's related to the transaction should be processed in a more efficient way now that we have great tools to do so. So just being a startup founder, you really have to figure out 3,000 ways to make money, right? And maybe 5 of them will work, right? And that's just the truth. I think it's great that we're in a great place where you have a lot of people like myself and thinking like myself, of like, I want to start my own thing. But if anybody's in the room that just wants to be a founder, I would say just do it. It's hard. It's not going to be fun sometimes. It's going to be very painful sometimes, but it's the best adventure I've ever been on my entire life. I love it. There's no line between, this is maybe good or bad, but there's no line between my personal life and like my actual work life, because it's just who I am, right? And I get to meet people like Steve. So that's always good.
Well, and I think I mentioned this briefly in another talk I had this morning around regulation. And I really do feel strongly about this. And I think Balcony and Alex are a perfect example of every system that exists today is going to be disrupted and will need to be reinvented. Every single system. And I'm, pretty adamant about this with my students. Why not you? Why aren't you the one disrupting systems? Why aren't you the one that are building what the future is going to be? And because literally every single thing you do today over the next 3 to 5 years will need to be reinvented. It happened with the internet, and I'm old enough to remember, the 2000s. You're not old enough.
Nope.
2000s. But and I remember when, every single thing we did, the way we shopped, the way we banked, the way we get our news, the way we interact with each other on social media, none of this existed 25 years ago. The people in the room today, their versions of them 25 years ago, are the ones that created this new disruption. And quite frankly, people like Alex fascinate me because, they're people that say, I wish this is better. Then there are people who say, I'm going to make this better. And they're very distinctly different personalities. And, I'm sorry, I don't want to turn it into this, but real generational wealth comes from people who say, I'm going to make this better. I'm the, all of us, and I'm going to give a little truth about myself. I missed out on a huge opportunity about 25 years ago. I was running the new product development division of the telephone company. Many of you that know me know that's where I got recruited off of campus right after the Judge Green decision came to break up the phone companies. And all of a sudden, the telephone companies needed to learn how to compete with each other. And a number of my colleagues said, we got this great idea. We're gonna invent a new system, which ended up being called TiVo, for you people that understand what that is. And I was the guy who said, no, I kind of like my job at the phone company. It pays me well. It's 9 to 5, and 3 or 4 of them went off and started TiVo. And I spent the next 10 years at the phone company. And, I didn't have the guts at that time to say, no, I want to be part of the solution. And I saw it again in 2000, and I see it today. Everybody in this room probably has said, you know what? I think there's a blockchain solution to something I'm doing every day. And what I'm going to challenge each of you to do is be more Alex and less Steve. To go out, and change the world. Quite honestly, one of the things I find fascinating about our industry is you don't need a factory today to build a product. Okay. You quite frankly, we're going to talk about this in the next segment. AI is really good at coding.
Oh yeah. In the past 6 months, AI has been our whole new mantra at Balcony. If you're not using AI, you're losing, right? So it turns salespeople technical. And I think that's the biggest advancement that you have. Selling technology is not fun when you don't have good demos to actually demo the technology. And a lot of times, sales guys are non-technical like myself, and I don't have a background in computer science, but Lovable takes the guardrails off that, right? Mm-hmm. So our stack is you have Gemini and Lovable running at the same time. I can talk to my Gemini, give me a prompt in my Lovable, then I can build a local demonstration based upon what the client wants, and I can do it very efficiently. And the client doesn't really know the difference between Lovable and something that's pushed code. All they care about is something that works and looks good, right? Mm-hmm. So if you empower your salespeople to be technical, it takes the pressure off engineers, because engineers, what they don't want to do is just build something and no one ever uses it, right? So this allows you to get validation on ideas quicker, which helps you sell things quicker. Go ahead, friend. For sure. Yep. So we're built on Avalanche. Avalanche, we use a layer 1 blockchain, which is a private blockchain. So how it works essentially is we're hashing information to our real world asset token, or RENFT or RWAT, whatever you want to call it. The blockchain found a database, right? So not everything gets put or printed or minted on chain. So we have a thing called Mod 4 New Jersey, which is tax assessment information, and that bytecode is being minted on chain. Everything else is an IPFS, which is hashed to that capital asset, right? So the deed document, the mortgage document, the code enforcement document is all hashed to that asset. how our customers or interact with it, we built our own explorer. So essentially they're able to see who touched this information, when they touched it, when did it change, if ownership changed over a certain time. But a lot of times no one is going on Etherscan or AVAX scan to figure this out, right? It's how your user experience interacts with the blockchain matters a lot more than what is like minted on some sort of like, third party website. So in our experience, people like to know that data is true, and how I sell blockchain, I sell it in the form of validity and truth versus like, this is Avalanche and you should own this because this is the future, right? Like, and like also in meetings, you don't really sell AI. You sell like, hey, then imagine having, 2 hours to index something. It takes like 10 seconds, right? And they're like, oh, wow, I have this time back. And they have this calculation in their head of like how many people are doing, indexing versus like if a computer can do it, how much time and money would they save? You have to relate like the innovation to money, right? Like, or time saved, or just overall, like I want to feel good when I leave at 5 p.m. and I'm not overstressed, because most people in government are overstressed because they work very long hours and they're very just like they're kind of on an island by themselves. Outside of the blockchain, we utilize like S3 as everybody else does. We have a Web2 backup. We have a Amazon stores backup. We have a number of different AI tools that look for processing, right? So on the document processing side, it's really your OCR capability that matters, right? Like how do you extract the metadata from these unstructured environments and how quickly you can do it. So we can index a 700-page deep book in 8 minutes when it took people, weeks prior to doing that by utilizing Gemini, right? And then but I think AI is not all made the same, right? I have a whole nother talk on about like how AI can give you bad answers. And it's not really like you're training the AI. And people say I'm training the AI, they don't really know what they're talking about. You're giving the AI context, right? So the more context you give the machine, the better the answer you're gonna get, right? And if you spend your time like building a brand new AI, somebody's going to compete with you, or OpenAI is going to have this new feature that's going to just ruin that business, right? So we believe at Falcon, we're an API, we're an AI that we're an API AI company, meaning that we're AI agnostic. Whoever comes out with the best new tool, we're going to use, because if you have to stay nimble in this world, like you can spend 6 months building something and someone else can build something way better than you, or they've been working on it longer than you, and then you're just kind of like, oh, what did I do, right? But to be the master of a domain, a master of a process, and building a data moat, that's what really matters, in my opinion, right? Everybody is going to have that new cool Ferrari, but it's going to be the guy that has all the data to that Ferrari that's going to have staying power, as opposed to just focusing on that one cool capability or tool. Go ahead. Yep.
See the scene.
Yeah. How it works, everything requires our primary product's called an asset registry. So the asset registry is like the base layer of technology that aggregates all the information. So think of mTrace like a module, just as much as like the property compliance module is built off of that, right? You're trying to find patterns within a larger legacy data set, and this pattern could be risk, or it could be missing money or compliance. And then when you add on the risk factor, you have to figure out, okay, what other open source data sets can I also add to this to make the actual story, right? Because like the whole goal is to make data tell a story, and you do that by putting in more ingredients to this like big data plot, and then the output that you get is dependent on the customer that wants that output. So law enforcement cares more about risk assessment, who lives in this house, the certainty of like finding out like the person that's doing something bad in this area, or fraud too, right? They care about like non-arm's length transactions, like figuring out if one person is selling a property to himself to get an inflated value for refinance, or if they're trying to do straight up defraud, right? Like Brooklyn, New York's the #1 capital in the world for defraud. And how that happens is because the systems are bifurcated and people don't know what they're signing. So like if you think of people that are older that get taken advantage of, that don't have access to like a computer, and you get pushed like, hey, you have to sign this piece of paper, but you don't really know it's a quitclaim deed that, gives interest in the property to someone else. That didn't happen to me, as crazy as it sounds. It's kind of awesome. It's like serendipity. The guy had no idea what he was doing. So my background's in real estate, and I owned a 12-unit building in Orange. I was selling it. Somebody came to my building, wanted to buy it, and they basically forged a copy of the purchase and sale agreement, tried to run title. They had my rent roll because I was trying to sell it to them. So they went to every single tenant, and they knew their name and say, "Hey, Alex sold me the building. Here's proof of this sale." But in reality, the title company called me and they're like, "Hey, it's not your signature on this paper. Is this really you?" I told them no. And I said, "What do I do?" Well, they said, "Well, we can't do anything but flag it on our underwriter, but they can go to First American and do the same thing, or they go to Westcore, do the same thing." There is no real estate cop in this country, right? There is no like arbiter authority that says like, "Hey, just as much as you put a lock on your credit report, you can't put a lock on your deed," right? That doesn't exist. County clerks have to record information if it's in the proper format. They're not law enforcement, right? So you'd have to file a litigation pending in the court system to stop any transaction. That costs money and time. So like the example I gave about the older person or people that just don't know, how are they going to compete with sophisticated people that can use AI to fake a lot of documents to submit certain things? It doesn't make any sense. Like, so the only way to combat that is that system of truth, which should be built on the blockchain, that'll prevent people from being taken advantage of.
Yes.
Beautiful. I think it's going to take more buy-in. Well, it depends on where you're doing it, right? Like I feel like in Bergen County, New Jersey, we have the buy-in of the county clerk and the people over there. So in that environment, I think it's pretty trusted. Um, to your question, so I further understand you. You were saying like, how can I cryptographically secure transactions based upon like a deed that I issue from my platform, or how do I answer that better for you? Okay, right. So the insurable product, I would say, is more so on the data accuracy side with like title research more than anything. Like I'm not trying to be a private company. I'm trying to build the infrastructure around private transactions. So I would say that, in next year, this time next year, we'll have every single deed on an immutable blockchain in Bergen County. So title research companies can make insurance policies of research on a blockchain system, which kind of answers your question in a way. At the same time, we're working with title companies in that same area. So the real problem that I'm finding is, as you're aware, if you submit a deed document that is not in the proper format to the people that are reviewing it, you get kickback, right? And then you have title companies that are continually trying to push information, being bad or good. They just don't know risk, and they can't assess who is actually like filing for whatever purchase and sale agreement that they're trying to do, because a lot of things are virtual these days. But if you can be on both sides of the transaction and have like a very streamlined way of submitting documents, you can have a more trustful system, as opposed to like being that, blockchain based deed. I think that's a legislative process that we're kind of far away from. I think depending on what state you're in or what jurisdiction you're in, there's a lot of things that have to happen for that to go down. But if you looked at it from a technology perspective, like how your property is, I would say, digitally defined, it's based upon the vendor that county is using, right? So that's how we're attacking it, a non-legislative way to just be more trustful without having, a blockchain task force issue a bill that it gets passed by both houses of whatever state to then make law. E-filing took a long time to get through, right? And it's still not uniform across the country. A county in my state still is on paper, right? Even though e-filing is the law of the land. So I think it's a people business more than it is a technology business. So it matters about the person more than the vehicle that they're using. Oh, for sure. Like Qualia, Simplifile, they're entrenched in the escrow business too, right? Like, so it's more than just having a streamlined way of submitting documents. It's also an escrow service that's attached to whatever submission that you're filing. I think we are more concerned about the speed in which metadata can be extracted, and also having a quality assurance check on the actual transfer documents more than anything, because that can make Joe in that title office or Lindsay in that title office have a more efficient workday. And then on the county side, it's the same problem. Like if you have Tyler Technology, if you have Catalyst, or if you have OpenGov, or any of these systems, they all rely on like metadata extraction of unstructured documents, right? And a lot of times that is not done efficiently because the documents aren't in the proper format prior to submitting. So if we focus on the technology side of it, the legislation is going to come.
I agree.
No, it's all good. I mean, I'm here for 10 more minutes, so fire away.
Anybody else have any questions before we go back to 10,000 questions? Let me just add a couple of things. One of the things I spent 45 years in new product development at Fortune 100 companies. It's kind of where my career has come from. And one of the two things that I feel strongly about in the types of things we're talking about here is, number one, technology has an incredible capacity to solve the problems of technology. And I think we're seeing that now with some of the tools that we'll talk about in the next talk, which is AI and digital twinning and different tools like that. These tools have incredible capacity for leveraging our ability as people to get things done. And so I've always been impressed with how technology solves those problems. But the piece that technology can't solve, and I think you hear it here, I even hear it from you, is an understanding and a passion for solving a problem. And I always in my classes have students solve a problem that's close to them. I don't want them to just go onto the internet and say, what would be a great project to solve with blockchain to make my professor happy? Okay. You don't really learn anything like that. What I want my students to do is, do they have a family business? Do they have a hobby? Do they have something that has them closer to that problem than anyone else would be? And you're hearing that from Alex. I mean, does anybody here question that Alex knows real estate? Of course not. Okay. But that knowledge that he has is what gives him the clarity to go, you know what? We can fix this part of this. Okay. I'm speaking as him, I have unique knowledge that this piece could be fixed using this technology. And so, I encourage you all in your daily lives to just think about, gee, that seems odd. We could probably fix that with this tool. And that's how problems are solved. Having a deep understanding, quite frankly, a passion in most cases to say, you know what, there's got to be a better way to do this. And I'm the right person to do that better way because I have an understanding that is unique and different and gets me to a level that brings much better clarity. And I think that's the example of what we're really seeing up here in this segment is, every problem is going to have to get solved all over again. And passion and understanding are the two most important parts. Don't be afraid of saying, yeah, but I'm not a technologist. I'm going to embarrass somebody who's sitting in the back of the class. No, don't turn your head, Dalton. I'm looking at you. Sitting in the back of the class is one of my former students who was doing a summer independent study program for me and decided he was going to develop an automation, a factory or home automation system. And as part of that project, he taught himself to code in a summer program. Okay. By the way, you didn't need to learn to code to get an A on that project, but he did it anyway. Okay. And now he's off with his own company. And here's somebody that before that class, could you code? No. Can you code now? Yeah. Okay. It's, that's how you solve problems. And everybody here, I think, is capable of doing that. Dalton's a little unusual. Dalton is a little special. Sorry, Dalton, to embarrass you. But, if there's any lesson to be learned in this segment, it's, and Alex, I think, personifies passion. And you're going to also hear from another dear friend of mine over here in the front row, Amanda Martinez. We're working on a project where we're tokenizing energy credits. And again, when you hear Amanda speak, you're going to hear a passion that you're gonna identify as a passion. And I think it's more important than coding. You hire coders, right?
Yeah, I mean, you need passion to get through the down times, right? But I mean, we're all in this together, but at the same time, like it's not always like smiles and rainbows, especially when you start a company, because you get ripped apart, and then I think your success depends on how fast you can take like whatever. Hold on, let me back up. I think VCs rip you apart a lot. I think raising money rips you apart a lot. I think if you take what they tell you and then put it to use, I think that matters more than anything. That's how we became successful. It's because a lot of no's that we got, we used the no's and we figured out how to get the yeses. So I think that's like the underlying theme here. So yeah,
My students are in the room that are in my room. You know, I want you to finish something you probably heard me say a dozen times. How do you learn to start a company? You start a company. Okay. There's no substitute for that. Okay. Alex is right. You're going to get beat up. Yeah. You actually look okay. You seem to have survived it. No, you know, that's how you learn to start a company. And I can't tell you through my career the number of times I've asked friends of mine, how did you learn to do that? And they go, I didn't learn to do it. I just did it. Yeah. And I'm like, well, where did you get the information? He's like, well, there's no shortage of information out there. Okay. You know, it's, having the courage of conviction to just push on through and do something that is what's changing the world. And to bring it back to blockchain, I think this technology is so well suited to starting businesses on your own than anything else. I mean, I would not have wanted to start an automobile company 150 years ago. I got to build a factory. I've got to hire hundreds of people. Just think of the way business used to be and think of how business is today and how all of these advantages now exist for everyone in this room just on bootstraps and shoestrings and the internet, starting a company.
I mean, Balcony started as a conversation with two friends, and now we have 20 employees. We raised $14 million in the past 4 years. We have a real office now with a key card. I feel like an important person. So, like, is it not one of those strings? Yeah, I got the string. So I feel like it's like what I initially wanted to do. We're doing it, but you just can't dwell on that because the sky's the limit and you have to be on your toes. Like people are there's going to be a lot of companies in this space, if there's not already, that are being started that do a similar use case. So how do you be better than everybody else? Like that is what we wake up for every single day.